Welcome back, my friends. Currently, we're on day 219 of Russia's disastrous invasion of Ukraine, and it looks like the Russian military is about to face imminent defeat in another eastern Ukrainian town. When we go on the war map on deepstatemap.live, I can show you what's currently happening with the front lines. And for the last 2 weeks, the Ukrainians have been trying to capitalize on their momentum from their Kharkiv counteroffensive, and they've been pushing across the Severodonetsk River out from Sloviansk with the goal of taking this town right here of Lyman. There currently are several thousand Russian soldiers stationed here, and they can't get to the city going with a direct frontal assault. Russia's defense lines are too strong. So the Ukrainians slowly have been trying to encircle the Russian forces in this town. So this is the front lines as of September 21st. We're going to skip ahead. This is the 22nd, the 23rd, the 24th, the 25th, the 26th, the 27th, the 28th, the 29th, and then the 30th. So you can see the Russian forces in the city of Lyman. If they choose to hold out, they're not going to be able to be resupplied. Here's a graphic from a pro-Kremlin media source admitting that thousands of Russian soldiers in this city of Lyman are completely cut off, completely surrounded. The Ukrainians are going to continue shelling them and then try to negotiate some kind of surrender. But I think in the next couple days, there will be a lot of media posts about Russia losing this city. So it's not looking great for the Russian military performance on the ground as they're trying to flood in hundreds of thousands of mobilized conscripts, men that are poorly equipped, poorly trained, and don't want to be there. And here's a report from the UK Ministry of Defense that an army larger than Russia's invasion force has likely fled Russia because of mobilization. Russia announced this crazy partial military mobilization of 300,000 men. Their true objective is to get closer to 1 million. But an equal number, if not greater, of able-bodied Russian men have fled the country in the last 10 days. So more Russians have likely fled their country in the week since Putin announced mobilization than made up the entire force massed to invade Ukraine 7 months ago. In the 7 days since Putin announced the mobilization, there's been a considerable exodus of Russians seeking to evade the call-up. While the exact numbers are unclear, it likely exceeds the size of Russia's initial total invasion force. So all of Russia's neighbors are taking notes. The biggest countries accepting Russians right now are Mongolia, Kazakhstan, Georgia, Finland, and Turkey. And they can't handle this influx of hundreds of thousands of Russian men avoiding mobilization. So Finland has officially closed their border to Russians with EU tourist visas. This was an easy way for Russian men to get across the border into Finland. Georgia is also exploring options to eliminate their program of visa-free entry. Additionally, the Russian military has now set up checkpoints just before the Russian-Georgian border in order to screen Russian men, make sure they're not trying to flee mobilization. And the reason why all these Russian men want out of Russia is obvious. Lots of documented pictures and videos of how poorly equipped and poorly trained all these conscripts are before being sent to the front lines in Ukraine. I can show you absurd pictures and videos all day of the equipment being given to these mobilized men. This equipment here doesn't even look like it's from World War II. It looks like it's from World War I. Here's a video taken by a recently mobilized Russian man of the bathroom situation at their military barracks. So this man hasn't even made it to the front lines in Ukraine. He's still in Russia. And this is what the average condition of a Russian military bathroom looks like.
Вот так вот, ребята, происходит обстановка. Князь Волконки. Это вот, где у нас умывальник, Вот так вот. В раковине для мытья ног. Это простые умывальники. И пошло. И, соответственно, с другой стороны такая же хуйня. Вот если у нас тут туалет вот так вот завален. Нас завезли вчера вечером вот так вот. Даже посрать в смысле, блядь, пиздец. Никак. Воды нет.
This entire clip is over 2 minutes long. I'll link it down below as always, but there's no running water in this bathroom. So all of the men just go outside and relieve themselves outside the building. Here's another video of recent conscripts that were called up and they were taken somewhere. I'm not sure exactly where they are. And they were just dumped in the field by their leadership. They were not given tents, they were not given warm weather gear, they were not even given a gas range to cook food. They weren't even given food. So this is what this recently mobilized Russian man has to say.
Вот так вот, ребята, мы мобилизованные люди. Приехали, в поле выгрузили.
Выгрузили, нихуя нету, костер жгем.
Сжигаем костер, блядь. Потихонечку разбираем это.
Жгем тампоны,
Разговаривая с вами, блядь. Старший лейтенант медицинской службы запаса. Призвали по мобилизации.
Всем привет.
Что, док, записываешь? Все. Никто не ждет. Вот так вот сумки стоят, Майданы. Очередь из автобуса. Обещали завтрашнему утру, блядь. Даже палатку с печкой не дали. Ночуйте в поле, и пофиг. Автобус уехал, никто никому не нужен. Сухпая не было.
You can already see there's snow on the ground, and these men are going to be sleeping outside with no equipment to survive the elements at night. And a lot of these Russian mobilized men are having their smartphones taken away from them. The Russian military doesn't want them to have cameras or internet access. They're telling them if they want a cell phone, it has to be like an old Nokia touch button phone without internet access. But for the Russian men that manage to hold on to their smartphones with cameras and internets, these are the kinds of videos that they're sending back to their loved ones in Russia. Here are Russian mobilized soldiers that were dropped off on the front lines in the woods, and they were given no proper equipment, no drones, no electronics, no night vision equipment, no food, and they were told just to guard this area.
Вот сидим в лесу. Только что был минный обстрел. Минометы хуярили по нам. Нас оставили в лесу и всем похуй на нас. Сидим, ждем у моря погоды. Мины прям в 10 метрах от нас падали, приземлялись, разрывались. Вооружение все там на дороге. На нас всем похуй. Как пушное мясо. Отправили в лес нахуй.
Видел где-то все Шойгу? Что сказал Шойгу, Коношенко? Что здесь творится с армией, тупой армией, которая вообще не действует? Только по кино показывают, заебись. А на самом деле вообще беспредел. Хуже, чем в ВСУ работаем.
Долбоебами. Никаких командиров, нахуй, командиры хуй возьмете. Съебались первыми, нахуй. Нихуя никого нету. Просто вот контрактники такие же.
Кроме автоматов ничего нет. Никакого снабжения, никакой электроники, ни квадрокоптеров, ни биноклей, ни тепловизоров. Вообще ничего нет. Автоматы и патроны, и все. И штык-нож.
И штык-нож висит, ну. Все, нихуя нету, блядь. Вот сидим, ждем. Посмотрим, что будет. Да. Ночью сидим на поле боя.
Находимся на передовой.
На передовой, вот прям за полем эти гондоны оставили нас без нихуя. Без воды, блядь. Без еды, нахуй.
Without food, without water, just dumped on the front lines. I don't see why these men wouldn't just surrender at the first opportunity. So with pictures and videos like these getting back to Russian men, they don't want to be conscripted, they don't want to be mobilized. Here's a map of all of the cases of arson in Russia targeting military enlistment offices. The blue flames are arson attacks on conscription offices prior to mobilization, 37, and the orange flame is the 17 arson attacks since Putin announced mobilization. And these military commissars, these mobilization officers, are getting pretty creative to find their man. Here's a video that shows these military commissars pulling the fire alarm in a building to get Russian men to come out so that they can hand them mobilization papers. But because there's a CCTV camera in the lobby, after they pulled the fire alarm, nobody came down. They all knew what was going on. So these commissars just started taping conscription papers to the doors on the outside. So as soon as the Russian men open their door, it'll rip the paper. For these commissars, that's good enough notification for them that that man has been drafted. If you want to go on Twitter, I've seen the videos. They're horrifying, of Russian men breaking their own legs, breaking their own arms to avoid mobilization. You can find the clips. But what I want to argue is that there is no system here. There is no database that is being referenced by the Russian military to make sure they're getting the correct men with the correct skills in order to get them to Ukraine to win this war. It's just about bodies. They're grabbing anyone they can to get them into uniform, to send them to Ukraine. And with mobilization, yes, some of these men might have done a 1-year conscription service like 20 years ago when they were 20 years old, but if they're 40 now, a 1-day refresher trainer course is not going to allow you to operate a tank or even know how to clean a gun if you haven't done it in 20 years. This is just absolute madness. And in Russia's rural areas where the minority population is higher, these conscription commissars are aggressively going after Russia's minority populations. Here is a Russian car with a conscription officer using a loudspeaker telling all male citizens to come to the office to report for conscription. So how do you think the head of Dagestan, Sergei Melikov, is going to respond to these mobilization officers just blasting with a loudspeaker that all men have to report to the mobilization office to sign up for military service? This is his reaction.
Может военком Дербента с подобным текстом отправлять людей, всем гражданам мужского пола города Дербента. Вы мне скажите, что это за идиоты? Всем гражданам мужского пола срочно прибыть в военный комиссариат, при себе иметь военный билет. Вы что, дебилы, а? Кто их уполномочил ездить по городу? Это не что иное, как распространение фейковой информации, за которую сегодня...
This man seems pretty fired up, as it's obvious to him that Putin is deliberately targeting his population in Dagestan to heavily mobilize them for this war in Ukraine. And it feels pretty obvious to everyone outside of Russia, but maybe it's becoming more obvious to the people inside of Russia that Putin is doing everything he can to avoid mobilizing the residents of St. Petersburg and Moscow, and by doing so, he's heavily mobilizing the ethnic minorities in the poorer, more rural regions. And Putin might even be using this as an opportunity to ethnically cleanse the undesirable minorities within the Russian Empire, just mobilize them for war, send them to Ukraine, have the Ukrainians kill them off because you don't really care about these people anyways. So this is what President Zelensky has to say to the ethnic minorities of Russia, that they don't have to fight and die for Vladimir Putin.
Позором. Никто не должен участвовать в позорной войне. Дагестанцы не должны погибать в Украине. Чеченцы, ингуши, осетины, черкесы и любой другой народ, который оказался под российским флагом. Всего почти 200 разных народов. Вы знаете, кто отправляет их в Украину. Тот, кто отправляет, он и хочет их сделать грузом 200. И вы этого хотите? Нет? Я уверен, что вы хотите жить. Я уверен, что вы устали.
And this is something about this war that is pretty incredible, in that President Zelensky speaks Russian, and he can directly communicate to all of the Russian forces currently attacking and occupying parts of his country. In most wars, you can't do this. When the Americans and the Japanese were fighting in the Pacific, even if you wanted to surrender to your enemy, how would you do that if you couldn't communicate to the other person? Yes, you can wave a white flag, and that should be the universal symbol for surrendering, but President Zelensky can directly speak to all of these Russian soldiers currently in Ukraine, and this is a pretty compelling message that he gives them.
Повторю еще раз тем, кто понимает только по-русски. Хотите жить – бегите. Хотите жить – сдавайтесь в плен. Хотите жить – боритесь. Боритесь на своих улицах и за свою свободу. У вас и так все забрали. Или у кого-то из вас есть нефтяные вышки, есть дворцы, есть виноградники, а может у вас есть яхты или какой-то банк. Вы за что вообще боретесь? У вас есть только кредиты, что-то вечером пожрать и теперь мобилизация. Боритесь за свое. Не лезьте на нашу землю, в нашу душу и в нашу культуру. Слава Украине!
That's a very compelling argument from President Zelensky. If I was a Russian soldier, I don't know why I would continue fighting and dying for the oligarchs of Moscow and St. Petersburg. Here's a pretty interesting infographic showing that the largest supplier of weapons to Ukraine is now the Russian military. So tanks that were captured or abandoned by the Russian forces, 386, they've all been repurposed for the Ukrainian military's use. The next largest supplier is Poland at only 300, the Czech Republic. Armored vehicles, 550 from the United States, but 690 from the Russian military. We've also got armored vehicles from Turkey, Great Britain, Australia. Same thing with artillery systems. The largest supplier of military equipment to the Ukrainian military is the Russian military. But that doesn't mean that Western allies aren't going to stop supplying Ukraine with military equipment and aid. Another 18 HIMARS launchers were announced to be sent to Ukraine. Unfortunately, these are not 18 HIMARS launchers coming from the United States' existing stockpile. These were going to be ordered and built new, eventually delivered to Ukraine in time. And the United States announced this $1.1 billion additional security package. Lots of great stuff in this package. I think people are a little disappointed that additional HIMARS launchers aren't being sent today. But the bottleneck is not launchers. Ukraine currently has 16 in addition to the M270 and the Mars 2. Ukraine has plenty of launchers. The bottleneck is how many of these GMLRS rockets that the United States can supply to the Ukrainians to launch from their launchers. And I've done the math in previous videos. The existing United States stockpile is close to 30,000. Perhaps the United States is comfortable giving up 1/3. So that's 10,000 of these deadly precision-guided GMLRS rockets, estimating how many has Ukraine been delivered and used over the last 3 months, it's probably between 3,500 to 4,500, meaning that over the next couple months, they'll get another 5 or 6,000 of these GMLS rockets. I also think as Russia continues to escalate this war, announcing mobilization and formally annexing these 4 provinces, I do think ATACMS missiles will be approved and will be delivered to Ukraine, allowing them a farther reach to strike at Russian military targets. The EU has also announced their next round of sanctions targeting 1,300 people and entities. You can always sanction more people close to Kremlin insiders. These are the children, the girlfriends, the mistresses of people working in the Kremlin. These people can no longer travel to the EU, and all the assets they had inside the EU are being currently frozen. And this is going to spell doom for the Russian economy. The Russian economy will die by winter because of the catastrophic consequences of the military mobilization. This is according to a top Russian economist. And how this works is that Russia is currently experiencing a labor shortage due to declining demographics. So these hundreds of thousands of able-bodied men being mobilized and sent to Ukraine, they're not going to work. They're not doing their ordinary job to produce value for the Russian economy. They're not paying taxes. In addition, they're costing the Russian government money to equip and feed. Let's now factor in the hundreds of thousands of Russian men who have fled the country. They're no longer going to work. They're no longer doing their job. They're not paying taxes. They're not stimulating the local economy by spending money at restaurants and in grocery stores. So this is going to hasten Russia's economic collapse in addition to all the sanctions that have been put on them. I don't know why Putin did this. He only did it, I guess, because he thought he had no other way. So what can the Russian military do to help the Russian economy? And they keep stealing washing machines. Here's a video of Ukrainian soldiers stumbling upon a washing machine that had been repackaged using these artillery wooden crates. The assumption is that Russian troops were trying to mail this washing machine back to Russia.
Нашел ящик. Думали, что ж тут может быть. Оказывается, блядь, они додумалися, блядь, позбивати ящики и всунуть сюда стиральні машинки. Это просто пиздец. Нашел ящик.
This will never stop being weird to me. Let's now wrap up this video with a clip of a true hero. This is a Ukrainian defender who plays the violin. This was originally posted to the Telegram channel, Soldiers of Ukraine, and it's about 50 seconds long. That's all for this update video. Glory to the heroes, glory to Ukraine. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments or questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, take care, be safe.